Welcome back. The State Department is picking up the ball in the Hillary Clinton email investigation. It has announced it will reopen an internal review of her handling of classified material when she was Secretary of State. This coming, of course, as FBI Director James Comey appeared in front of a congressional committee this past week and defended his decision not to criminally charge Clinton. Joining me right now is James Kallstrom. He is the former Assistant Director of the FBI. And, Jim, it is always a pleasure to have you on the program.
Nice to be with you.
Thank you so much for joining us. What's your take, first off, on this breakdown of rule of law that we're seeing? I know this is bothersome to you as well.
Yeah, Maria, I'm so concerned about our country and our democracy. I mean, lying now is just rampant. No one seems to really care. A poll of Democrat voters said even if she was indicted, they would still vote for her, the majority of people. You know, whatever happened about duty? John Kennedy saying, don't ask what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. That's dead and buried. You know, I just feel bad for people that are growing up in this country because it's so vastly different than it was when I was young.
I've got to go through the Jim Comey testimony with you for a moment. First of all, I was very taken aback that the interview that was done of Hillary Clinton with the FBI was not recorded and it was not under oath. You were there at the FBI for so long. Is this customary, not to record a conversation with a major subject, not to put them under oath?
I haven't been there for a while, but I was taken back by that. And I was also taken back by the fact that he acted like he hadn't even spoken to the agents that were there. I forget his exact words, but it was sort of lackadaisical as to what that even meant.
Yeah, he said he didn't do the interview, other agents did, and he has notes.
Yeah, I mean, why she wouldn't have been asked. I think it's important for the public to know what was she asked and what were her answers.
Right.
Did she take the Fifth Amendment 35 times? Did she refuse to answer? Did she not have recollection of the facts?
Yeah.
You know, that's all important stuff. This woman's running for President of the United States.
Right.
This is the same woman that I believe, from reports, was fired from the Watergate Commission for lying, and who went to the Andrews Air Force Base and lied to the parents with the caskets 20 feet away.
Well, this is a really important point because Jim Comey was asked, did he see the congressional testimony where she said to Congress, I never sent or received any classified information, and I gave the State Department all of my emails, which, of course, then we learned that there were 30,000 emails that were destroyed. So she, I think, lied to Congress, and he said, oh, no, I didn't see that. I didn't look at that testimony.
Well, I would think that all of that would have been incorporated into this investigation. You know, her prior testimony, her prior statements, of course, those are critically important. You know, how can you do investigation and not even look at those things? And what about the Clinton Foundation? I mean, what's going on with that? He says, I can't talk about that. He needs to talk about that before the election. People need to know, is that under investigation? You know, on paper, that looks like a huge, huge criminal conspiracy to me.
We know that she was talking to the Russians when she was Secretary of State and approved a deal for uranium, U.S. uranium, a huge amount of U.S. uranium to go to the Russians, and then Russia gave money to the Clinton Foundation. I mean, this is all in Peter Schweizer's Clinton cash book.
And the 5 people on the board of that company that received it, you know, donated like $2,500,000 each to the foundation. So it just never ends. And as far as intent, when you set up a separate, I mean, here's a woman that's been around the government a long, long time. When you set up a server that's for the express purpose of not complying with the Freedom of Information Act, the Official Records Act, you know, what more intent do you need?
Right.
And you tell people to take off security notifications on top of documents. What further intent do you need?
I'm glad you brought up intent, because I want to play for you what Rudy Giuliani said to me this past week. But it's interesting because when you just look at the situation, what was your intention of having a private server? It was to keep your communication private.
Well, and then then the president says this is the most sophisticated, the best lady that could ever be recommended for this office.
Yeah.
And then she wants to, when someone says, did they scrub it? She says, what do you mean, with a cloth? You know, this whole playing dumb like she doesn't understand any of this stuff.
That was so disingenuous. Here's Mayor Giuliani. He also raised the issue of intent. Listen to this. This was last week on Fox Business.
The director of the FBI made a really wrong decision, completely incorrect, and gave people a completely wrong impression of how you prove intent. and then ignored the two statutes that don't require intent and gave no explanation of why there would be no indictment of those statutes. In fact, he laid out all the facts that would require an indictment. He said she was extremely careless. Well, the statute requires gross negligence. Gross negligence and extremely careless are the same thing.
Bottom line, do you think there is room here for a possible perjury probe that should be started for Hillary Clinton? And what about the foundation? Do you think we will find out anything and get any details of this investigation before the election?
I think without question that should be looked at. You know, and that should be done expeditiously. We need to know that. You know, we're here comments, you know, what difference does that make if all that comment was in line with, you know, what the actual truth is? And absolutely, the Clinton Foundation needs to be looked at. What kind of a foundation is this? It gives, what, 20% of its monies to charity? How does it even meet the requirements of a 501c3? And is the IRS looking at that? I doubt it.
Did politics get in the way of the FBI's work, do you think, as a longtime FBI man?
I just don't understand why Jim Comey felt he had to make that decision and take the Justice Department off the hook. He should have presented the facts, sent the facts over to the Attorney General, and let her make the decision and then live politically with that decision.
Jim Kallstrom, thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you.
We appreciate it. James Kallstrom joining us right here on set. Attorney General Loretta Lynch getting ready to testify on Capitol Hill this Tuesday about the Clinton email investigation. A member of the House committee that will question her will join me next. Darrell Issa on deck as we look ahead. Lynch set to testify before Congress this Tuesday. The nation's top law enforcement officer taking her turn in the hot seat to answer questions about the Hillary Clinton email investigation, just days after a House committee grilled FBI Director James Comey. Let's talk about it right now with California Congressman Darrell Issa, who is also a member of the House Judiciary Committee. Congressman, thanks very much for joining us this morning.
Thanks, Maria, and thanks for covering sort of this evolving story of Hillary Clinton and her various unlawful acts.
What are you expecting to hear from Loretta Lynch on Tuesday? What are you expecting to question her about?
Well, I think she's going to fall back on her earlier statement that she's simply going to take the career professionals' recommendations, even though, as you said in the earlier segment, the FBI director ignored the fact that she lied before Congress. A congressional referral is not required if you observe a crime, and it's a crime to lie to Congress. So absolutely, it's an open and shut case. He's already made a determination that she said things, or that she in fact transmitted marked, highly classified materials repeatedly. I don't think he really thinks she's so unsophisticated as to not know better. So he has a case right there, but ignored even mentioning it or in any positive way sending it. And I think Loretta Lynch will do the same. To be honest, and I don't want to predict what's going to happen before our committee overly, but my assumption is that this whitewash will continue. It will include the Attorney General, who obviously met with the president's or met with the former president in an inappropriate way and had a private conversation that we'll never know part of. But this is the nature of this administration, and Hillary Clinton, in a way, is simply part of a very hidden administration that gets away with doing what it wants to do.
So you think politics got in the way for James Comey when he testified?
I think he blinked. Maria, I think he blinked. I think he could have done exactly what was said earlier. He could have presented the facts as he presented them in that initial interview and skipped anything beyond that. You know, the FBI is not how you get to a criminal prosecution. The Department of Justice regularly, with other agencies and on their own, evaluate facts and present to grand juries. The fact is, if he said, these are the facts as I found them, and then sent it over to the Department of Justice, let those U.S. attorneys say, we cannot prosecute it because no jury will convict her, no jury will convict her because at least one Democrat will always vote no. That may be the case. What we call jury nullification. But the reality is she knowingly, with forethought, planning, circumvented the law, and it led to, by her own statement, at least 300 people sending and receiving classified documents, and yet the FBI director and I suspect Loretta Lynch are going to have us believe that none of those 300 people should be held accountable for what is a violation of the law, one that regularly leads to people's firing and criminal prosecution.
And of course, this just a couple of days after President Clinton went on Loretta Lynch's plane, the sitting attorney general. They spoke for 30 minutes. We understand they were alone. Have you ever seen someone in such a high position, the attorney general, have such a meeting without staff in the room taking notes?
No. I've had a lot of meetings with a lot of people for a lot of years in government at these levels. There are always note takers. I repeat, always note takers. You know, in WikiLeaks, some of the things that were said when I traveled overseas and met with foreign leaders became public. The reason is there is always a note taker.
Sure.
You just don't have these. And by the way, you shouldn't have them. This kind of conversation with a civilian, he's the ex-president, but he's a civilian, is the kind of thing that shouldn't happen.
Congressman, someone said to me a week ago, well, look, James Comey did not want to play God. We have a major presidential election. He didn't want to be in the spot where he's going to be deciding. He doesn't want to play God. I guess he just did.
Well, he did and he didn't, and I'm going to back off a little bit on the FBI director. He presented to the American public her guilt and then made this assumption that she couldn't be prosecuted. But the American people on November 8th are going to evaluate what they now know. They know that she did set up the server.
Right.
She did transmit and receive vast amounts of classified materials, and they should have been classified at the time. In some cases, the classifications were removed. At least 100 times to approximately 300 people, she was involved in sending and receiving documents that did say classified on them at various levels.
Right.
And then she lied about it. That's for the American voter to decide.
Yeah.
And I actually have faith that the American voter, in a sober moment when they decide somebody that will do this apparently for her convenience and privacy, can they be trusted when, in fact, they're going to be controlling our men and women in uniform, they're in harm's way. These kinds of things absolutely get people killed.
Well, we've got the convention next week. We'll see if the Republicans get behind Donald Trump. Are you behind Donald Trump?
You know, I'm behind the nominee of the party, and I'm behind, and Maria, here's what I hope people will focus on. The nominee of the party, if elected, will have about 24 key cabinet officers, including a vice president, who will be leading government. If you look at the likely people that would lead government in a Trump administration, I think what you see is a lot of people who want to make America safe again, who believe America is great and wanted to recognize that once again.
Congressman, thanks so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you, Maria.
Congressman Darrell Issa there. President Obama's trip overseas interrupted by tragedy here at home as he prepares to visit Dallas. Our panel is next as we look ahead to the conventions next week. Sunday Morning Futures continues.